Hello and welcome to Crafting at Home with OC Public Libraries. Today we're going to show you how to paint a watercolor watermelon that you can use to make one of these cute cards. For supplies, you're going to need some watercolor paper that's cut and folded into the shape of a card, as well as an envelope that fits that card. You're also going to need a board to tape your paper down to while you're painting. I'm using a clipboard and then also some masking tape. You're of course going to need a paintbrush. This is a round tip synthetic brush. And some watercolor paints. I use 2 shades of green, a lighter and a darker, and 2 shades of red. You're also going to need a pencil and a good eraser. A black and a white pen are a good idea as well. You're going to need 2 glasses of water, one for rinsing your brush and the other one for picking up clean water. A ruler is also a good idea if you want your lines to be nice and straight. You're definitely going to need a paper towel or a rag to wipe off your brush on, and then maybe also something to protect your table. To get started, I have taped down my paper to my clipboard, and I'm going to pick a point that's going to be the tip of my watermelon slice, and then I'm going to use my ruler to draw 2 straight lines out like I'm making a triangle. And then for the base of the triangle, I'm just going to freehand a nice curve there, like the shape of a watermelon slice. Now you want to sketch this kind of lightly, and if you have a hard time sketching lightly, you can always just erase it a little bit when you're done. You want it to be light enough that you can see where you're going to paint, but after you paint over it, you won't be able to erase it. So you want it to be nice and light so the paint can cover it. So we are going to fill in our watercolor shape with a wash, which is a wet on wet technique. So the first thing I'm doing here is just loading up my paintbrush with clean water, and I'm filling in the entire shape of the watermelon just with a layer of clean water. And the trick here is to make sure that you fill it in completely, don't leave any dry spots. And sometimes you have to go over it once or twice because maybe a piece of it will dry while you're painting the rest. But you want to get all of that nice and filled in and clean edges with the water. And you can see there that it's not a puddle, but it does have a shine to it. Now this is the fun part. I've loaded my paintbrush up with some of my light green, and I'm laying that down along where the peel is on my watermelon. And you can see that I'm doing multiple layers, and it creates sort of a faded effect of the green as it is carried off into the wet areas on the paper. Now I'm adding in some of the darker green paint along the edge, and you can see how this wash effect creates a very natural edge where the dark green fades into the light green now. And I'm taking a clean, dry brush now to pull up some of the green that has run too far up the side of the watermelon for me because I want most of that area to be red. Now I'm adding in my lighter red just to the center of the watermelon shape, and you can see I'm dabbing it and kind of letting the water carry it, pulling it all the way out to the edge. And this is just really fun to kind of add the paint in, watch as it flows around. And you do have to move somewhat quickly because you want to do this entire step before the water that you laid down on the paper dried. So it's a good idea to have your paints and everything all set up and ready when you start painting. And now I'm going to add in some of the darker red right at the tip of my triangle, I want the darker red to fade into the lighter red. Another thing to be aware of with watercolor is that it dries a little bit lighter than it looks when it's wet. So if you want bright colors, you really want to put them down dark to start with. Now we're going to let that dry completely. I have a second watermelon that I painted already that's completely dry, and it's ready for me to start drawing on my seeds. With my black pen, I'm just making little teardrop shapes wherever I think a seed would look nice. And then I'm going to add just a little dash with my white pen on each seed, and it gives it kind of a 3D effect. Now it's time to add words to the front of our card, so I'm going to use my ruler to draw some straight lines as guides. And I'm going to write in my font with my pencil. I'm going to start in the middle so that it looks nice and even. Once I'm happy with how it looks in pencil, I'll go over it with black ink. And then I'm going to erase all of the pencil before I paint, because again, you can't erase pencil after you paint over it. Now I'm coloring in the words with watercolor. You can see that I'm using the same wash technique on the word melon that we used for the watermelon slice. For the O, I'm going to paint the background a light green, and while that's still wet, I'm going to paint the dark green lines over it, and those will be a little bit faded into the light green and look nice and natural, like a real melon. And now you have your handmade watermelon card that you can send to someone who's special to you. I hope you have fun with this project. I hope you get creative and make it your own and use these techniques to create something that's one of a kind. And thank you again for crafting at home with OC Public Libraries.